Mohammed, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. Thank you.
We are honored to have you this morning. Thank you so much for taking time to join us. And we appreciate the fact that you're presenting this health talk out of the country. So we thank you very much for that opportunity. And to our viewers and our clients and our friends who have joined us this morning. This morning, we are honored to have Dr. Gaman Mohammed. Dr. Mohammed is an accomplished diabetologist practicing at the Comprehensive Diabetic Center in Nairobi. He holds an MBCHB from the University of Nairobi with a diploma in master's degree in diabetology from the University of Croatia. His area of interest is diabetology, this includes insulin pump therapy and CGM, fasting and diabetes, and in diabetic foot. I know most of us who are diabetics are not able to fast because of the diabetes, but today Dr. Mohammed is going to take us through how do we fast even when we have diabetic. He was actually the first person to set up the first insulin pump at the center, both in East and Central Africa, and has some publication in this area. He's a member of the KDSG and a board member of East Africa Diabetes Study Group. He has been recognized for his groundbreaking approach in diabetes and its areas, and Dr. Mohammed was honored with an award by the Kenya Diabetic Study Group for this expectation used in innovation in managing diabetes. So this morning, believe me, you are in good hands. Remember, you are what we eat. And diabetes is one of the lifestyle diseases that we can all prevent. And that is why APA Insurance has taken your health in your hands. And we are presenting this morning the diabetes talk, or how we can change our lifestyle to avoid this. So Dr. Gaman Mohammed, I would like to welcome you in, and just to mention, we have our viewer who already asked if you can go through diabetic. Is it a genetic illness? And once you're diagnosed with diabetes, is it possible to take medication and heal? I'm sure you'll be mentioning this as we proceed on. Karibu sana, Daktari.
Thank you very much, Zainab. Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you loud and clear.
You can see my slides.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So, thank you, Apollo, for APA, planning this particular webinar, and I thought it's an important webinar because diabetes affects us all directly or indirectly. So no one can escape having to deal with diabetes directly with themselves or indirectly, either their parents, their friends, their relatives. So today I'm going to try and take you through the world of diabetes, but more important, I would like to have questions coming in because that's what makes things a bit interesting. What I tell you will be available, online, but the interaction, the questions is what's more important. So today I'm going to take you through basically what is diabetes, what's our statistics in Kenya, the world, how does it present, what sort of treatments are there, what complications are there, how can we prevent diabetes, talk a little bit about how to eat healthy because that's one of the cornerstones, and eating healthy prevents non-communicable diseases, and exercise. So that's what we're going to do, and then take up questions as you bring them up. So this is where I come from. So basically, if we look at the data in Kenya, it's really underestimated. The prevalence saying that we have about 5.3% prevalence of diabetes is an underestimate. But to be honest, we are looking at probably 1 in 10 of our, or 1 in 12 of our people in towns have diabetes. So this is all telling you that we are having a problem that is growing and will be of greater importance, if not already an importance right now. So what is diabetes? It's a disorder where the body cannot produce insulin or utilize insulin properly. So you have an insulin deficiency, or a resistance. So you have a relative deficiency or an absolute deficiency. That means you have no insulin, or the insulin that you have does not work well. This results in elevated sugars, and this can cause complications in multi-organs and can even cause early death. So what normally happens, insulin is produced by the pancreas, and when insulin is produced, it lowers the blood sugar. Insulin acts like a lock or a key to allow sugar to go into the cells. So if the lock and key is not there, either you have sugar not going into the cells, you have sugars not going into the cells, so the sugar stays in the bloodstream, and then some of the symptoms that you have, like peeing a lot, is because your body starts wanting to clear the sugar in the bloodstream. Then as it clears the sugars in the bloodstream, then you get dehydrated, because when sugar leaves your body, it leaves with water, you start drinking more water. So this is like a cycle that goes on in someone's body. This is a very easy cartoon to try and explain that our bodies need sugar to function, to be happy. So this cell, for example, when it has insulin, which carries sugar from the blood into the cell, is happy, there's energy. But when a person is diabetic, where either your insulin is not working well, or it's not there, you have sugar in the blood, but not in the cells. So it's like someone dying of thirst in an ocean of seawater. So you have sugar, but it's not available to the cells. So if you look at a brief history, the name diabetes comes from the word siphon. What was noted long time ago is people with diabetes to pee a lot. It was the way when you pour water into a siphon, it just comes out. Mellitus comes from the word sweet as honey. When they tasted the urine, they found it to be sweet as honey. So diabetes mellitus means siphon in Greek, and mellitus means sweet like honey. It's been talked about, for quite some time. This is a very ancient papyrus called the Ebbs papyrus, which has been seen in Egypt. It's about a 20-meter scroll. Was written probably around the 500 or 150 BC, and describes also the symptoms of diabetes. In the Hindu Sanskrit as well, it is also described, and it's described as honeyed urine. In the early 1600s or 1700s, people used to test urine and see whether when they boil it, does it form crystals at the bottom, and then they would know this person actually has diabetes. And what's worrying is really the growth of diabetes worldwide is really growing at an exponential rate. But the biggest worry or the biggest concern is, although we'll have a 463 to now around 578 million people in the year 2030, and about 700 million people in the year 2045. If you look at the growth, the biggest growth is actually in Africa. So although the other continents are going to increase in their rate in diabetes, if you look at Africa, the growth is going to be 143%. Southeast Asia, Americas are not as much as probably Middle East, North Africa, and of course, Southeast Asia. So what does this tell you? This problem of diabetes is going to affect the poorer nations, the nations that probably are struggling with their health economics. They already have challenges or burdens, and now they'll have a greater burden of dealing with diabetes. So we have to look at strategies to focus on prevention, primary prevention and secondary prevention. Primary prevention means we try and prevent diabetes, and secondary prevention means we try and prevent the complications that are associated with diabetes. So why is it that we have a higher rise in these countries? We tend to think that we are changing our lifestyles much more, what we eat much more. And maybe we have a gene called the thrifty gene that predisposes us to putting on weight in the same amount of food, let's say with what a European would have. So this gene that was a survival gene previously, because there was not much food in Africa or Asia, is now becoming a gene that brings about obesity and, of course, causes non-communicable diseases like diabetes. So let's say if diabetes was a country right now in the world, we would be the third largest population in the world, behind China and India. India now is overtaken China as the most populous country. So you can imagine diabetes, the number of people with diabetes being like the third largest country in the world. So why is there an increase in diabetes? We tend to think there's a change in our lifestyle. What is really happening? We are being colonized by the Coke culture, or the culture of fast food, or the culture of modifying our traditional foods. If you go to Kisumu now, instead of fish being boiled, it's now fried, deep fried, had with chips. If you go to Nyeri, instead of the mukimo or the potatoes being cooked, mashed with just salt, now you add butter, you add salt, you had cream in it. So all these is enriching the food. Chapati has become a luxury, and each chapati probably has 6 to 8 spoons of sugar. If you go to Mombasa, people are not walking as much as before. They'd rather go on the tuk-tuk from one place to another. So all these are small factors. Their diets are also quite rich in carbs. So all these are factors causing increased obesity, other factors like decreased physical, and of course, stress does influence a rise in diabetes as well. This is a picture I took when I was going to Arusha. And really, if you look at this place here called the Scorpion Pub, for 150 shillings, you can get wali, samaki, and soda. The wali will be a full plate, the samaki will be little, the soda will be there. Who would not go for this sort of food where you're having a lot of carbs to fill you at only 150 shillings? This person here, who you can already see is overweight, is now buying chips there. You don't know what sort of oil was used there, whether it's transformer oil that was used to make that, but those chips, you know the trick about making chips? If you want to make money, you reduce your cost of your oil. So if you use transformer oil, you can use it for 6 months to 9 months, and that oil is carcinogenic or can cause cancer. So these are some of the things that we are facing right now because we want the nice fast food, so-called nice fast food meals. So if you want to summarize, there is mainly 2 types of diabetes. There is the type 1 and type 2. Type 1 used to be called insulin dependent, type 2 is non-insulin, but that's not the case, because type 2 diabetics also can get what we call can need insulin. With type 1 diabetes, there is no insulin. It commonly occurs in children or adolescents and occurs in about 10 to 15% of all diabetics. While type 2 is normally seen in adults and occurs to 85 or 90%, mainly comes in above the age of 40. If you look at the differences, one is seen in adulthood and one is seen in childhood. One, there is no insulin. The other one, this is type 1, there is no insulin. And type 2, they are resistant to insulin or have insulin, but it's not working well. Type 1 diabetics have a low to average body fat, and type 2 are quite obese. Type 1 will require insulin. Type 2 may require insulin as the disease proceeds above 7 years or so. Type 1, most of them will not require drugs. They may use insulin, but if they are type 1 and obese, they may use some drugs in diabetes. Type 2, they will require to take medication. Of course, type 1s have little or no insulin, as I mentioned, while type 2 may have normal or too much insulin. The beta cell function or the pancreas is functional in a type 2 diabetic, but not in a type 1 diabetic. And of course, type 1 and type 2 may present very differently. Type 1 abruptly, type 2 slowly it can develop. And sometimes people may end up blind and they say, but I didn't know I was diabetic, or they may have a kidney failure. So it's slow progressing and can be not diagnosed easily if someone does not test. There's also the other class that is bigger, which is called gestational diabetes. And this is seen normally in pregnancy and is seen in families who have history of diabetes. And once you have gestational diabetes, of course, it puts you at a higher risk of becoming diabetic yourself. And really, if someone has given birth to a child more than 4 kilos, it also puts you at risk of type 2 diabetes. So who is at risk of diabetes? Siblings of people with type 1 diabetes, and also persons with genetic predisposition. So basically, we were trying to look at earlier, or the question earlier on was, is it genetic? Yes, there are genetic predispositions, but there's also the environment. The environment such as obesity, inactivity, and then also we seem to think that maybe we don't fully understand it. Maybe there are genes that protect you from diabetes and genes that predispose you to diabetes. And when these genes interact with the right environment, you get diabetes. For type 2 diabetes, it's really people over the age of 45 with a family history of diabetes, people who are overweight, people who don't exercise regularly, with cholesterol problems, and who have had gestational diabetes. So one of the things you can change, you can't change your genes, but you can surely change how much you eat, how much you're active, how much activity you have. And if you're diabetic, surely you can change things like the alcohol you take, the smoking that you do. So those are things that will also prevent complications. So what are the symptoms of diabetes? I mean, to be honest, the symptoms are vast and wide, and one must be really careful by saying, oh, I'm thirsty, I must be diabetic. Some of these symptoms may be seen in other conditions, but whenever you're unsure or you feel that you may be diabetic, you should please test, go and have your blood test done. So things like excessive thirst and appetite, increased urination, weight loss, fatigue, nausea and vomiting, blurred vision, vaginal infections in women, or just generally yeast infections in men or women, a dry mouth, sores that don't heal, and itchy skin, especially in the groin or vaginal area. Those are some of the things that may cause, may make you think that, hey, I might be having diabetes. Other things like sexual problems, blurry vision, all those things are sometimes also there, and we tend to sometimes just ignore them. And as that last statement said, 50% of people may have no symptoms at all. Actually, we are saying that from the patients who are out there, 50% of the diabetics have not yet been diagnosed. So how do you diagnose diabetes? If you do what we call an HbA1c, a normal HbA1c, which is an average sugar for the last 3 months, an A1c of less than 5.7 is normal, or 5.7 to 6.4 is pre-diabetes, above 6.5 is diabetes. If you want to simply check your blood sugar using a glucometer, a blood sugar less than 7, fasting, if you have it between 6 and 7, that's what we call impaired fasting glucose. Most people say a fasting sugar below 6 is normal. Some people say 5.6. If your blood sugar after eating, 2 hours after eating, or when you take what we call a glucose challenge, is above 11.1, that is in the diabetic range. If your blood sugar after you've eaten is between 7.8 to 11, that is what we call impaired glucose tolerance. So any sugar above 11.1 at any time would be considered to be in the diabetic range. A sugar above 7 would be considered also to be in the diabetic range if it's a fasting blood sugar. So how do we treat diabetes? Type 1 diabetics will require insulin. They can give it by injections, they can give it by syringes or pens, or what we call insulin pumps, and we have now what we call artificial pancreases for type 1 diabetics and some type 2 diabetics who are on multiple doses of insulin. And this gives insulin in an automated fashion. It gives you insulin in an automated fashion. Are you all seeing my, everyone can hear me? We are good, okay.
Yes, we can say, and we can hear you clearly.
I'm just trying to make sure that I don't go off on my network. Type 2 diabetics, really the goal of treatment is to first improve how they utilize their insulin. That means you want to make their bodies use their insulin efficiently. So you use those sort of drugs. Then there are newer drugs that make them pee sugar out of their body. There are drugs that make them lose weight. And then sometimes they do require insulin. Now, this is from the therapeutic portion, or what we call the pharmacological portion. Things like exercise, nutrition are important, and weight loss, especially in type 2 diabetics, is also important. So how do you control your diabetes? First of all, it's like there are three pillars. You must take your medication, you must go for your treatment, and you must monitor your blood sugars. That may seem obvious, but it's difficult without it. Then the other three legs of the stool are regular exercise, which I'll talk to about in a few minutes, and of course, looking at things like your diet. Regular exercise can be something that you try and repeat. You should not try and do something that you can't repeat. You can start slow, you can start small, you can do things that generally are part and parcel of your life. Let's say, for example, if you work on the 5th floor, walk up the floor. If, let's say, you go to use a matatu getting home, maybe in the evening when you're going home, because mostly in the morning you'll be rushing to go to work, you get off one stop before and then you start walking. If you have a watch or a phone that calculates your steps, try and do about 10,000 steps or 7 to 10,000 steps. If you do that in a day, that's some form of exercise. And it would be an easy way for you to mark, am I taking enough steps? When you can, don't sit for too long. If you can, if you're sitting for too long, stand, walk around, or work while standing. Those are some of the things that can help you, improve your risk. As I mentioned, there is no real universal program, but it's recommended at least 210 minutes per week, and stay well hydrated when you exercise. And even people who are elderly can exercise by either just movement or stretching of their muscles. That's exercise for them. Keeping their muscles or their joints mobile will help the elderly people as some form of exercise. So if you don't look after your diabetes, you're at risk of complications. What are some of these complications? In essence, the complications occur because of several things. The first thing is blood sugar affecting the blood vessels, the large and small blood vessels, such that you can get heart attacks, you can get strokes, you can get what we call a peripheral artery disease leading to amputations. It can damage the small blood vessels in the eyes, such as you have retinopathy. It can cause nerve problems in your feet, because diabetes does affect nerves. It can affect the nerves that control sexual function, digestive system, controlling your heart rate. All those can cause problems. Then, of course, your risk of infections are higher when you have poor blood sugar control. So if you have poor blood flow, infections, and nerves that don't tell you whether you've got hurt, you can have, it's a recipe for getting what we call things like the diabetic foot. So I mentioned blindness, and it's one of the leading cause of blindness, where you have small vessels being weakened or damaged because of high blood sugar. And if you wanted to see the left eye here that is fully red or looks totally red apart from a small orange spot is normal, while on the right side, or my right side, you see those yellow spots. That's what diabetes does to your eyes. And if it damages the area close to where vision is important, somewhere around there, you can have major problems in terms of blindness. We know about dialysis and kidney disease. It is a leading cause, and 10 to 21% of all patients with diabetes have what we call nephropathy. Remember, I mentioned diabetes damaging the small blood vessels. You start having kidney problems by having leakage of protein in the urine, damages to the structure of the kidney itself, such that you have poor kidney functions. And this takes several years to develop and can be prevented. And as I'm saying, all these complications can be prevented by good blood sugar control. I mentioned about nerve disease and amputation, and here it goes that 60 to 70% of people with diabetes may have some form of diabetic nerve damage, and it can cause lower limb amputations, and it's the most frequent cause of non-traumatic lower limb amputation. Let me see, someone raised their hands. Okay, maybe I'll take the questions at the end. I mentioned earlier that diabetes is one of the leading causes of heart disease and stroke. So what I tell all our patients is diabetes is a cardiovascular equivalent. So if you have diabetes, it's like you've had a heart attack. And that means when you're looking at your risk of a second heart attack. So diabetes per se have a 2 to 4 times more likely to have heart disease. It's present or in 75% of diabetes-related deaths. Most of the times, diabetics will die of a cardiovascular event. And of course, here this includes stroke and myocardial infarction. Let's just go through what we see and let me bring some reality to what I've been talking about. This is an old lady who had diabetes and had nerve problems, walked barefoot where she was cooking and had actually, she used to collect firewood, and a piece of wood went right through her foot, causing an injury there that went up to the other side. Over time, it healed, but you can tell that this was something that she did not feel things. You see, the injury was still the top part of her foot. She did not feel things. So here you have someone who was neuropathic, who probably had poor sugar control and developed an infection after stepping on that sharp piece of object. Luckily, she did heal. This is a patient from Mombasa who was walking barefoot with slippers. He did not feel things, hit his toe on a stone, and it got infected. It healed later on, but this is something we call a neuropathic foot. Then let's look at what we call an ischemic foot, someone who has poor blood flow. This is a patient who you can see has an ulcer there, but it's not even bleeding. There's hardly any blood flow. And in the end, this patient died of a heart attack. We are not surprised because when you have poor blood flow to your feet, you have problems with blood flow even elsewhere in the body, causing you to have a heart attack or stroke. So really, can we prevent diabetes? Can we postpone diabetes? Can we cure diabetes? There have been studies that show that lifestyle changes reduce the risk of getting type 2 diabetes by 58%, with a 5 to 10% weight loss. So if you're targeting weight loss and you're pre-diabetic, you can actually, what would I say, reduce your chance or postpone. Can we cause diabetes to go into remission? Yes. The remission is when you do not require treatment. You're staying without treatment and your blood sugars are well controlled. But you should not confuse remission with cure. Remission means something is just, or reversal, just means something is silent at that particular time. But you still have to watch your diet. You have to test, because if you gain weight, it comes back again. And normally remission or reversal is seen earlier in the progression of the disease. When it's later, it's difficult to say, I'll not require any medication. Yes, lifestyle changes are critical and will cause a reduction in the requirements of insulin or tablets. But earlier on, it can cause what we call a reversal, such that you don't require treatment, but you are not cured. With type 1 diabetes, it's not preventable right now. There are studies looking at how we can influence the immune system to stop attacking the pancreas, but it's hard to say that it's something that is preventable of now. But things like maintaining good sugar control, lifestyle, and we are thinking that maybe a cure with islet cell transplant could be there. However, the success rate hasn't been very good, and that's why things like the artificial pancreas or the insulin pumps have actually taken quite a bit of precedence in terms of importance when we look at treatment or management of type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes on multiple doses of insulin. I like sharing these two pictures because I met these people some time ago. The lady on the right is an opera singer. She didn't manage her type 1 diabetes well. She was blind, had a kidney transplant, has severe neuropathy, but she's an opera singer. So she's brought on stage by someone. They give her the mic, and she holds the mic with her hand. She's told, okay, hold the mic. So she presses, she knows she's holding, but she has a beautiful voice. So what she said is, yes, we may have challenges in life. We may have things that um, are really beyond us, and things may have happened because of choices, but there's always something we can do at any stage of diabetes. So she's living her life despite having all those complications of diabetes. And of course, you know, Halle Berry, who reached to achieve a lot of awards. And if you look at her now, even at this age of, I think, 50 plus or something, she looks like a 30-year-old managing her diabetes. So all said and done, you know, you've got to look at diabetes and say, yes, it's serious, but it's a controllable disease. And as you go along, you must encourage people to prevent, to treat. You must motivate them that it's not as bad as what we think. It's how we make it, how we look at it, and all those are important factors. Now, I'd like to look at a few things here because nutrition is really something that is really important for all of us. And to be honest, there's no diet that fits all. You can't say this will be, everyone is different. A shosho in the rural area may have choices that she has to make that are different from you in the city. Availability of foods, costs, preferences, all those need to be taken into account when we are looking at what is a diet that would be suitable. So the easiest way, and of course, it's good to see nutritionists, seek advice, and they'll be able to advise you a little bit better. But let's say you want to eat healthy for, like there's that book, Eating Healthy for Dummies. So just use the plate model. And this is suitable for both diabetics and non-diabetics, where you say you divide your plate into 3 portions, very simple. But most important is you need to first know what is your plate. It's not a senior. Some people will say, okay, I was told I can have half my plate vegetables and a quarter my carbohydrates. So here you have a senior and you said, I've only put a quarter of my chips or rice. So this is not a plate. This is a senior. And this is like for maybe 4 or 5 people, maybe 5 or 6 actually, to eat that. So first is we have a standard plate, which is about 22 centimeters long. And then you have half your plate having non-starchy vegetables, which do not raise your blood sugar. And of course, they are high in minerals, they are vitamins. And here you can look through the list there. Then the next thing you look at is your protein, which could be a quarter of your plate. Your protein you could increase. This is an area that can be increased. If you can't get a lot of vegetables, that's an area you can actually increase. And we know the samples of protein that are listed there. Omena could be easily for us. And then you have your carbohydrates there, which is your starch, should be a quarter of plate. This is where we need to decrease our quantity. Make sure that we don't take a lot of carbohydrates. That's where our vice is, because our foods are generally made all out of carbs. It's easiest, it's fastest, and we tend to overdo our carb intake. So that's an area that we need to kind of take care. An important factor is someone saying, I'm having this particular portion and I'll have soda. Each glass of soda is about 9 spoons of sugar. So you can't have this and then say, I'm having soda, like 2 glasses of soda. Or you can't say, I'll have a big plate of rice, then I'll have a Diet Coke. They have to go hand in hand. Your liquids also, or whatever juices, fluids you take must be low in carbs as well. What about when you need to combine food? You're at work, you're getting pizzas or something. Go for like a thin crust pizza. Add vegetables, whatever you have there. Try and think rationally. This has bread. I need to decrease my quantity of carbs, so I'll go with a thin crust pizza rather than a thick crust pizza, and I'll only have 2 slices, for example. Now, what's important, and I like this, is because someone will say, I will eat nitatembea nyumbani after I eat this, plate of chips. I'll just give you an example first, and then we'll go into the foods. So if you a 30 minutes jog will burn 6 spoons of sugar, which is 30 grams of sugar. A 30-minute swim, 5 spoons of sugar, and 30 minutes of cycling will burn 7 spoons of sugar. So remember that as we go to the next slide. This portion of biryani is equivalent to 32 grams of carbs. To burn that, you need 24 minutes of cycling, 30 minutes of running, 34 minutes of swimming. How many of you have only this amount? You probably have the second portion of biryani, which is 108 grams. To burn that, you need 79 minutes of cycling, 100 minutes of running, or 112 minutes of swimming. This means most of the times we store it as fat. And that's why we tend to put on weight and we have some of the challenges. Let's go to the chapatis we love. If you have one chapati, and if you put a bit of butter, and this is probably thinner than the normal Kenyan chapati, it's 26 grams of carbs, which is about 6 spoons of sugar or 5 spoons of sugar. Remember, if to do that, you have to cycle for 23 minutes, or to burn that, you need to run for 28 minutes, or you have to swim for 31 minutes. And of course, if you do it the way we normally do it here, you probably need to cycle for 67 minutes or swim for 1.5 hours. How many of us can do that? What about chips? Again, this small portion of chips there would need you to cycle for 31 minutes, and this one for 94 minutes, or run for 118 minutes. What I'm trying to bring about is that we can't exercise and say we'll eat what we want. As you go along, you need to think through, and you know that this probably is not the right way. The right way is to start also to eat with the right foods as well, or the right quantities of food, sorry. Again, as I said, I'll just have a soda, and I'm having vegetables, I'll have a soda though. Each glass of Coke, you need to cycle for 16 minutes, swim for, jog for 20 minutes. If it's a bigger bottle, the 500 ml that people walk around with, you have to cycle for 24 minutes or run for 30 minutes. So again, let's look at Ramadan. In Ramadan, we do adjust medications. We tweak the medication such that your morning dose goes to night and your night dose goes to morning. But our biggest problem is the diet. This is a simple meal I picked up when I was doing my study on diabetes and Ramadan. A very simple meal in a family that has what I would say a low income. Look at what each person was eating. About 280 grams of carbs, which is 42 spoons of sugar. How much would you need to exercise to burn that? So these are some of the challenges we face. And this is the same story that you can have in some families, at certain times where they have heavy carb meals. So I'd like to thank you. And now we can take up your questions. Let me pick up the questions. Can I go ahead and look at the questions directly?
Yes, dietary, you can proceed.
So what are the effects of insulin is the first question I'm picking. Let me see.
You have several dietary. I don't know you are picking from which one.
Is this? Yeah, I've seen several here. And
Yes.
first, I'm just reading from what I'm seeing here. What's the effect of insulin? Insulin per se moves sugar from the blood into the cells. It's a hormone produced by the body. Of course, if you have too much insulin or resistance, then it has other effects on your body as well. Can injecting insulin be bad for you? No, not at all, because you normally inject what you require. If you inject too much insulin, you can get what we call low blood sugars, but it's not a side effect per se. It's a dose issue when you have low blood sugars. Is diabetes reversible? I remember I mentioned to you that it's reversible when you say your HbA1c is well controlled, below 6.5, and you're not using medication. But you still have to follow a diet. You still have to be strict. And remember that you're not cured. It's juvenile diabetes. It's now what we call type 1 diabetes. You can't really prevent it because it's a mixture of genes and environment. They seem to think things like viral infections, exposure to cow milk, but we really don't know. But what we can do is really prevent what we call type 2 diabetes in our young children. This is now, we're finding children presenting with like the adult form of diabetes because they get too overweight. After church, you're buying them sodas, or you come home, you buy them a soda, or a bottle of soda, and they go through that. Remember, each 300 ml of soda could be 5-6 spoons of sugar, and kids can go through 2 glasses easily. That's 12 spoons of sugar. Look at how much exercise is required for that. What is LADA? LADA is a condition that we see or it's a latent form of autoimmune diabetes in adults. So you find that maybe an elderly thin person is picked up with diabetes, and he has the type 1 type of diabetes in an elderly age. So it's like a slow progressing type 1 diabetes seen in an older person. They're normally lean, and they will require insulin. If one has diabetes for many years and has been taking medication, consistent watching diet, however, risk presents problems such as blurred vision, dental issues. So what could be the cause? And so there could be many things that are happening. One, has their control been good? That's one thing. If their control has not been good, they could be getting now infections. They could have affected their eyes, their kidneys could be affected, the heart could be affected. So what first this person needs to do is go to the doctor, have all these tests done to make sure to know what is their status or what's going on. Sometimes things like thyroid problems that are separate from diabetes could have come on, and it's got nothing to do with the diabetes. So I think the first thing to do is go see your doctor so that you actually can have tests done. Of all the signs and symptoms of diabetes, the basic symptom that would be observed, you are sure you are diabetic even before testing. There cannot be something that you are 100% sure, but most of the times, fatigue, drinking a lot of water, fasting would be a key cornerstone to allow you to check. But remember, you have to test to confirm. Correlation between high blood pressure and diabetes. Definitely, if you gain more weight, if you're obese, if your sugars are high, your risk of high blood pressure is definitely there. And of course, if you have a lifestyle that is sedentary, you get what we call this non-communicable disease, and blood pressure and diabetes are one of them. Type 1 is the most common life-threatening in life, I believe. Does it affect children? Yes, type 1 diabetes does affect children, can affect a child from any age, almost from birth, to any particular age. Type 1 diabetes in the elderly can be what we call the LADA, as was discussed before. So it can affect any particular patient. What about intermittent fasting? It's a good way to try and control your blood sugars, but you must seek proper medical advice to see how you can adjust your medication. Are you at risk of what we call ketosis? Because some people who are on insulin, and if they fast for very long periods, they can be at risk of ketone formation, but it's a useful way of keeping down the weight and diabetes reversal. It cannot treat or cure, but it can help in control diabetes. So diet can definitely help control diabetes. Does the body convert all carbohydrates you eat into fat? No, it depends on your requirements. Some people, if they take a lot, it will be converted. If you take less, it will be converted less. If you're exercising, it will be converted less as well. Do we have CGMs here, the Dexcom and Libre types? Yes, we have the Libres. I use quite a bit of them, so they are available locally. If someone was diagnosed with type 2, with diabetes 2 years ago, and the sugar level stabilized in the last 1 year, can someone be taken off meds? Okay, diets. This is an important factor that I'd like to bring across. This patient probably has gone into some form of remission with her diabetes, but remember, they are still have diabetic, and there are two schools of thought. If she was managing her diet very well, some people say, do that, but keep an eye. Some schools of thought say, take a simple medication that tries to keep your body sensitive to insulin so that you can prolong this period of not requiring any treatment. But for the rest of their life is questionable, because normally it does come back later on, but it depends on how you manage yourself. Is there a link between diabetes and dementia? Yes, there are links between diabetes and dementia. Diabetes can affect the nerves, it can affect the brain, and you can have people who are poorly controlled having dementia. Why does diabetes level keep on shooting in a diabetic patient with a diabetic foot, and how can they get back to normal? Very important question, Lucy. Lucy, when you have an infection causes you to require much more medication. So I'll tell you about something called the fight and flight hypothesis. We are animals. When we are faced with danger, we fight or flight. An infection causes our body to make sugar. An infection makes us require more medication. An infection may even make us need insulin. So this sort of patient, they need to be treated aggressively, okay? For how long can I manage diabetes from the age of 40? You can live a normal life with a normal lifespan if you manage yourself well. The main thing is managing yourself well. There are people who've lived with diabetes for 70, 80 years, and die of something else, as long as you manage yourself well. Can it be inherited? Yes. There is the factor that if there's a family history, you have the genes that predispose you to diabetes. But what I would like to say is that you can not change your genes, but you can change your environment. You can choose how much you will eat. You can choose how much you will exercise. You can choose not to put on weight. If HbA1c has been in line for some time, say 1 more year, can the medication reduce? You need to do what we call a serial sugar test. That means checking your sugars before and after meals. Why am I saying that? It may be a good average, but it may be that you don't need to change anything. You can continue. So don't stop your medication. See your doctor, or don't decrease your medication. Let them do your sugar charts and advise you. Is there an inter between, like it can be ranked? Yeah. This is what we call a type 1B, where you can have people who are obese and they're type 1. So they have features of type 2 diabetes and type 1 diabetes. That can be there. Migraines can be predisposed by high sugars, fluctuating sugars. And of course, migraines per se are recurrent. But if your predisposing factor was the sugar, then you can manage the sugars and you have less migraines. Is it okay to skip medication when you combine exercise and medication? You have to do that with your doctor's advice. It depends on how high your sugar is. Definitely, regular exercise will decrease your requirements, but by how much is the question? Do you need to skip totally, or do you need to take less? Especially when it comes to insulin injection, you need to discuss that with your family. If you have an HbA1c greater than, say, 7.4 and you haven't been told you're diabetic, you are diabetic. An HbA1c less than 5.7 is normal record. 5.7 to 6.5 is pre-diabetic. Above 6.5 is diabetic. What causes loss of appetite when someone has diabetes and hypertension? This could be several factors, James. Sometimes if you're type 1 diabetic, you get what we call ketoacidosis, where you don't feel like eating, your stomach feels bloated. And sometimes type 1 or type 2 diabetics have nerve problems. They don't move food through their stomach, so they get this sort of symptoms. Sometimes they could be depressed, and sometimes it could be something else that's causing them to have those symptoms. Can someone get diabetes by consuming 3 to 4 spoons of? Not really. 3 to 4 spoons will not cause diabetes, but if you have that, if you gain weight, if you're obese, if you have a sedentary lifestyle, you increase your risk. You can have the same 2 people having 3 to 4 spoons, one gains and one does not gain. And then, of course, there's the genetic makeup. Can one stick to one diet throughout? If I'm trying to understand, just make your life easy, just have one thing throughout. You could, but that would be very difficult and not practical in life. Life is about eating is one of the pleasures in life. What I'm saying is try and look at how you eat, control your portions, and you can still make your life interesting. Yeah. Ketones are a breakdown of fat. What happens is when you don't have enough insulin in your body breaks down fat to bring what we call ketones. So ketones can be dangerous in a type 1 diabetic, can be seen sometimes in a type 2 diabetic when they're unwell and their body is breaking down fat. Where can I get a CGM in Uganda? I wouldn't know that. I'm so sorry. Yeah. What's the real cause of diabetes, sugar or fat? I've done our bodies can survive on protein and fats alone, but yet our bodies are designed to deal with excess glucose as stored as glycogen. So basically here you look at what is the weight of the person. What's happened? People have been able to have proteins and fats, but we also feel that you may need a little bit of carbs to prevent something called ketone body formation, especially if you're insulin deficient. So yes, what we're trying to say, lifestyle nutrition is really, really important, and we need to do much more. But then we need the issue of going to, for some people, going to a total keto diet, which is less than 30 grams of carbs, may be questionable. And this should be done in consultation with your doctors. Why is it that some exercises result in a sugar spike? Is it when I run or do aerobics, my sugars go very high. So what happens with some people, when they immediately start exercising, their bodies churn out sugar. So maybe you can try and walk first a little bit to kind of warm up your body, and then jog later on. That may help you avoid the spike, but it's your own body making sugar. Why is metformin the backbone of treatment with diabetes? There are several questions or reasons for that. One, it's tried and tested. It's the oldest drug. Two, it's the cheapest drug as well, and it's seen in most formulas. So it does help in starting with metformin as a backbone. But we now know that we have to combine, and a lot of times you'll see mixture of vildagliptin and metformin being given earlier on in the disease if the sugars are even slightly high. So combination therapies are seen now as a much more prominent approach. But metformin has been the cornerstone because of all those reasons that I've told you. Can tests determine the genes to advise the chances? Yes, you can do HLA testings, but those are really expensive, done at specialized laboratories, and we are not sure how many genes in total will predispose you. So what the easiest way is to say, I'm at risk of diabetes, I'm living in this current era. And even if I'm not at risk of diabetes, by controlling my diet, I'm preventing hypertension, I'm preventing obesity, I'm preventing heart disease, my risk of stroke. So I would look at it that way. This is really, really interesting. All these questions I've been enjoying, to answer all of them. Anything else? Have I answered the questions in full?
There's someone who has been raising her hand, Mother Waweru. Then of course Daniel Ochieng. Maybe we'll start with Mother, and then we go to Daniel. We give them a chance to talk. Mother, good morning. Hola, Christopher, as Mother. Christopher Nadianya. Christopher Nadianya, good morning. Then if they're not able, we can give Daniel Ochieng.
Yes, hello.
Yes, Daniel, how are you?
I'm good. Good morning. So I asked a question. Yeah, I asked a question, but I wasn't answered. There's a research I did on diabetes, and I found out that the body can survive on protein and fat alone. So that's why I asked the question: what's the real cause of diabetes? Is it the sugar or the fats? Because also, if looking just a moment. Looking at maybe the caveman diet in the 1800s, most of these guys survived on sugars from fruits and plants. But like diabetes wasn't rampant as it is right now. So like, is the real cause sugars or fat? Because like our bodies can deal with the excess fat, the excess sugars, and convert it to glycogen. And in the event that you're not taking any sugars, then your body will convert the excess fat, will break the excess glycol in the fat to glucose, and because you need glucose in your blood system. So what is the real cause of diabetes? Sugars or fat?
Okay, the real cause of diabetes is obesity. You can say fat, yes, but the way you're turning the question is, let's eat fat. And there have been studies that showed that these people are at high risk of heart attacks and stroke. So you need to look at not studying one thing only, but look at it globally. What I have said was you need to think of things from a rational perspective. We need to cut down our carbs, go down to a diet that is between 30 and 100 grams, or in some people, they can go a little bit lower than that. But we have to be very careful. If you're insulinopenic and you have what we call a purely fat diet, we've had kids coming in with ketoacidosis in hospital because they only had fat and they were told to have fat and proteins. So it has to be very careful. And I think you need to look at things from a broader perspective when you look at those sort of statements from the internet.
Thank you, Dr. for that. Someone was asking, what is the best oil to use for cooking?
That's a very good question. And you know, before we used to talk about moving only to things like vegetable oils, but we know that now the thoughts are changing. People can say even you can cook with you know, ghee, with fat-based oils, with olive oils if you want to use some of the other oils. So we are changing our perception of oils as well. But what I'd like to say is really per se is, how much do we use? Let's say if you wanted to use ghee, or if you wanted to use butter, if you wanted to use, and that's where the debate comes in. You know, will I have a tub of ghee and survive on the ghee? Because that's so. These are things that what I can say is, what do you have? Use it in moderation, because there are also issues of cost and things like that. But this idea of only saying that it's a vegetable oil that is fantastic is changing. I would say work around what you have, look at trying to use what is available and affordable, but do everything in sort of like limitation, especially when you're using some of these synthetic oils.
What is the recommended glycemic index for a diabetic patient?
We don't have a recommended glycemic index, in the sense that you're talking about what are the carbs that someone should take. And that probably would be a much more rational questions to ask. So normally we advise that people should have a low carb diet. That is between 30 and 100 grams. 30 and 100 grams is roughly, you need to see a nutritionist to show you that, but it's roughly saying each slice of bread is about 15 grams of carbs. So if you're saying I want to have 80 grams per day, that's about 5 or 4 slices of bread in a day in total, and no other carbs that you're taking. Most of us eat about 200 grams of carbs or 150 grams of carbs, and that's too much. So if you're looking at it, you're trying to say with each meal, maybe around 30 to 40 grams, the main meals of carbs as a max.
And one on the anonymous attendee is asking if a goat lamb is healthy.
Sorry, a goat?
A goat lamb.
Oh, lamb.
Goat meat.
That means,
If I
yeah,
put
it's
it that
fine.
way, yes.
It's fine. It's fine.
Then I'll still go to Mother Waweru to still give you a chance. Mother, you had raised your hand up. Mother or Christopher? And someone is chatting me to ask you, Daktari, can alcohol improve insulin levels?
um, what he's asking maybe at the background is maybe there are some people who, when they drink the next day, their blood sugar is low in the morning. This is because what happens when you have alcohol, your liver focuses on clearing the alcohol rather than producing sugar, because your liver does that overnight. That's how we survive. If we didn't have a liver, we would have to eat every 2 hours. So the liver gives us some sugar to allow us to survive overnight. So alcohol does not improve your sugars. Alcohol can damage your liver. Alcohol can damage your pancreas. And when it damages your pancreas, then you stop producing insulin.
Thanks, Doc. Christopher, now you can go ahead. Christopher Narianya.
Yes, sir. Hello, my question is, hello.
Yes, please.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. I can hear you.
Yes, I wanted to ask, at some time when I've taken, there is these drugs, metformin and no-gluc. Whenever I use metformin and no-gluc, it's like they affect my appetite. Is it is there any other drug that can be used in place of no-gluc or metformin?
I think the drug that is affecting you is the metformin, not the no-gluc.
Yeah.
So you need to talk to your doctor, tell them that you're having some irritation in your stomach that makes you not feeding, and probably he'll be able to change that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christopher. There's some more questions on the Q&A section, Daktari. Please shed light on what is the synthetic, I think that one we had covered. Which fruits are not healthy for type 1? And also maybe to just repeat the same question that has been asked, please shed light on what is synthetic cooking oils and how we are supposed to handle them.
Okay, let's first start. So basically, the way the way oils are manufactured vary from one particular company to another. And we need to be a bit cautious, and this has changed over the last few years. But things like ghee and all, they are more natural. Olive oil used to be pressed before. It's even a better oil than the other oils that we see. So you need to be a bit more careful about, maybe get a nutritionist to take you through what exactly, which oils are probably less are safer. But even things like our traditional ghee are, not synthetic, and now people now are looking at it more in terms of their cooking, or olive oil that is pressed in a different in a different way. So I would look at it that way. But I think you need to go through a nutritionist to tell you which ones. That is not my area of specialty, but it's an important thing to look at, and also just look at how much do you use of these particular oils, that if you're worried about them, try and control them, because maybe sometimes someone may have no access to anything else. They may need to think through outside the box. Can they use coconut oil to cook with, those sort of things. They are different things. Fruits that have less sugars or berries, mainly apples, those ones have less and can be eaten a little bit more if one wants to indulge. All fruits can raise your blood sugar, and this is something that is there. But if you have less of that, it's fine. But berries and all have less sugars. And a useful way of packaging your fruits is maybe if you have them with a salad, some leaves or some cucumbers and carrots, it may make your sugars rise a little bit slower. So that could be a strategy one could use. Can children below 10 years get diabetes? Yes, they can. Why are Maasais and other bush? This was a question I was trying to explain in the thrifty gene hypothesis, which states that a traditional Maasai probably lived in an environment that had less carbohydrates. He had less salt, less stress. And then now when he moves to the city, this is now in abundance. And maybe the thrifty gene, the gene that protected him before from starvation or surviving on little food, now becomes detrimental to them. What about dairy products, milk, yogurt, cheese, butter? Yes, you can have them. Just milk probably has more sugar than yogurt because of the lactose. You know, when you leave milk, the part that settles at the bottom is more protein. The part on top has sugar. So that's something that you would say yogurt is better than milk, cheese, butter. You can have them, but of course there are issues with how is my cholesterol. But I would say these are things that we would say we couldn't have before, but we can have. But let's do everything in limitation, because there are patients who can live on, you know, just butter or very high fat diet, and for them, because of their risks of cardiovascular, they can have. We've had one or two people who've had high cholesterol levels and they have problems as well. So let's try and look for a middle ground. Let's look at things that have greater facts as we try and apply them. Are you yourself a diabetic? Yes, I am.
Daktari, there's one question that has been asked on our side. There's a myth, I don't know if it's a myth, maybe you can elaborate, that diabetic medication actually lowers your libido. And what is your comment on that? And what would be your advice?
Yeah, I think it's not the medication that lowers your libido. It's actually poor blood sugar control that lowers your libido. And so someone relates it with the medication. So my advice is treat your diabetes well. There's also changes with libido with age and things like that. But there is help. You can see your doctor. They can help you with medications that can help you manage your libido problems and things like that. But it's not from the medication.
Thank you, Daktari. Just one more. I know you're running out of time. We know you're very good with juvenile diabetes and all that in small babies. Now, we've had cases where babies as young as 4 years, 3 years are being diagnosed with high sugars. What are the indications, especially for the mothers, to look out? What symptoms? Because you know babies cannot talk. So what are the symptoms that are portrayed that mothers can look out for?
For very young babies, it's difficult, as you said, but things like rashes in the genital parts, they are peeing a lot. You're changing, if it's your second baby or third baby, you find they are peeing a lot. They look lethargic. They look like dehydrated. You need to have it checked. It is rare in children, thank God, because that would be a big challenge. It is very rare in children, but those are some of the things to look out for.
I think we lost you a bit when you started the sentence. We caught you
So
up at the frequent urinary.
So it's rare in children, and I say thank God for that. But things like rashes, you find that there are rashes, they have a lot of rashes or fungal infections. The baby, you're changing the diapers very often. They look very lethargic, or you find that they are finding it difficult to breathe, or you find that their breath smells of what we call ketones. Ketones is like a fruity smell, like a rotten banana. Those are the ketones. When in type 1 diabetics, you can get that they're lethargic. Then you can quickly have them checked, or at least have them checked at any facility. They can check their blood sugars.
Thank you so much. One more question, Daktari. Does metallic taste could it be a sign of diabetes?
Some people may say they feel like a sweet sensation in their mouth, They may have an altered taste. Some people may have reflux that gives them the metallic taste. So it's a vague symptom. I wouldn't say it's something as one of the main symptoms or things you would say, oh, this is diabetes.
Thank you so much, Daktari. We really appreciate your time. Could you kindly just tell our viewers where you're found so that they are able to locate you for help?
Okay, I practice at the Comprehensive Diabetes Center, and I do clinics at the Avenue Hospital and Broadwalk Mall for Avenue Healthcare. So those are the two areas, and I'm sure they can contact you guys, and you know how to get me.
Thank you so much, Daktari. As at APA, we are committed to the wellness of our clients. We also have a special program that runs at APA Insurance to support our diabetic patients, hypertensive patients. Kindly reach out to APA Insurance. We are your partner in health. We have covers that cover that. And you are welcome to join us. We've shared our contacts on WhatsApp, and you can reach us. We'll be sharing Dr. Gaman Mohammed's contacts and his times of clinics. Otherwise, on behalf of my colleague, Mr. Justice Monene, on behalf of APA management, the health team, and APA family as a whole, Daktari, we are honored to have you this morning. We thank you very much. And for our special viewers, special guests, we appreciate your presence. Remember, your health is in your hands. So kindly, let's follow what Daktari has told us and we'll be out of danger. With that, I want to appreciate you and wish you a lovely weekend ahead. Meet you again on the last Saturday of the month. We'll be sharing the main topic for that day. Thank you so much, Daktari.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.